Have you ever felt it? That one strange moment when everything is normal until it isn't. Mason Carter had no reason to think this Tuesday would be different from any other. He stood behind his daughter Lily, carefully brushing her long brown hair into the ponytail she always asked for. Outside the kitchen window, the sun rose quietly over their Ohio suburb, the kind of place where nothing dramatic ever really happened. Then Mason's phone vibrated with a sharp metallic buzz. Emergency alert. He frowned. Probably another weather test. But then, the town's sirens screamed. It was a sound unlike any he'd heard. Not a tornado siren. Not an amber alert. This one was steady, long, uncertain. Like the voice of someone who doesn't know how bad the news is yet. "Daddy," Lily whispered, "why is the sky yelling?" Before Mason could answer, the TV flickered on automatically with the national emergency override. The screen glitched, then revealed a trembling news anchor. This is not a drill. We have verified strikes on U.S. military installations overseas. This is day 2 of coordinated global attacks. Authorities believe this may signify the beginning of... Static swallowed her voice, but the message had already struck. World War III. And just like that, the world shifted. The street outside exploded into chaos. Car doors slammed, engines roared. Someone shouted the name of a child. Someone else screamed for their dog. Fear spreads fast when people don't understand what's happening. Mason grabbed Lily's backpack and slung it over his shoulder. "Get your shoes," he told her softly. Inside the living room, his wife Elena sat on the couch with both hands over her mouth. Her phone was vibrating nonstop, notifications pouring in faster than she could read them. She looked up with eyes wet and terrified. "It's not just overseas, Mason. They're saying cyber attacks hit our infrastructure. Some states lost communications. And," she swallowed hard, "some officials think more is coming." Mason put his arm around her. "It's going to be okay." But even as he said it, his gut twisted. Because for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure. "Stay or leave?" Elena asked. Their little house had always felt safe, normal, predictable. But war has a way of turning familiar spaces into fragile ones. Mason felt the weight of the moment pressing on his chest. "We stay. We know the area. We have supplies." But Elena shook her head. "No. If cities get hit, what if we're next? What if the grid fails? What if—" They both stopped when they saw Lily standing in the hallway, hugging her stuffed panda. "Why are you fighting?" she asked, voice trembling. "Can we just be together?" That simple question cut through all their fear-filled logic. Whatever they decided, it had to be together. School shut down within an hour. Teachers tried to hold quick virtual meetings so kids wouldn't panic. But kids know. They always know. Lily's teacher, Mrs. Reyes, smiled tightly through her webcam as dozens of little faces appeared. Some crying, some confused, some trying to pretend everything was fine. "Listen to me, my loves," she said gently. "You are brave. And courage isn't about not being scared. Courage is about choosing kindness and hope, even when things feel scary." Just as she finished, her screen stuttered, then froze, then went black. One by one, the children's screens collapsed into static. The online classroom dissolved into digital dust, and the moment it disappeared, parents everywhere felt the same sinking realization. The systems they depended on were failing. By noon, the grocery store parking lot looked like the aftermath of a hurricane. People weren't yelling at each other, not yet, but their fear was visible in every hurried step and trembling hand. Shelves emptied faster than employees could restock them. Water vanished first, then canned food, then batteries. Mason tried his best not to look panicked as he grabbed what he could. He reminded himself, "I'm a father, a protector. I can't freeze." But then he saw him, a teenage boy around 16, standing outside the store crying silently. His backpack hung off one shoulder. His eyes were swollen. "You okay, kid?" Mason asked. "They're out of everything." The boy wiped his face. "I have two little sisters. I can't go home with nothing." Something inside Mason cracked. He opened his trunk, picked up one of the water packs he bought, and handed it to him. The boy stared at the bottles like they were gold. "You don't have to." "I know," Mason said softly, "but I want to." The boy nodded, still crying, and whispered, "Thank you." It wasn't a grand act, but in a world suddenly swinging toward darkness, small kindness felt revolutionary. By evening, the nation felt like it was holding itself in place with fragile thread. The president announced a temporary curfew. Cities turned off streetlights to conserve power. Highways jammed with people fleeing rumors of more strikes. And on social media, panic spread at the speed of thought. But there was also something else, something quieter. Neighbors knocking on doors, people offering blankets and chargers, mothers holding each other, strangers sharing emotional oxygen. Fear makes people crumble, but sometimes it makes them gentle too. At exactly 9:17 p.m., the entire neighborhood went dark. Lights, heaters, TVs, everything blinked out at once. Mason cursed under his breath. Power grid failure. He fumbled through the drawers until his hand brushed something metal and cold, an old hand-crank radio that once belonged to his grandfather. He had nearly thrown it away months ago. Now it felt like fate. He cranked it for a minute until the static crackled to life. The voice that emerged was shaky but human. "This is the emergency civil broadcast. Remain indoors. Conserve resources. We are working to restore communications." Elena exhaled. Mason squeezed her hand. "Sometimes all you need is a voice to remind you you're not alone." Just after midnight, a soft, hesitant knock. Mason froze. Elena clutched Lily close. Another knock, this one weaker. When Mason finally opened the door, he found Mr. Harlow, their elderly neighbor, hunched over, shivering violently. "My generator. It died," he panted. "And Janice. She needs her oxygen." Fear dissolved. Compassion took over. Without hesitation, Mason pulled him inside. War reveals character. And in that moment, Mason remembered exactly who he wanted to be. Candles flickered around the living room as the Harlows settled on the couch under blankets. Elena connected the small solar battery pack they owned to power Mrs. Harlow's oxygen machine. It hummed softly. That hum was hope. As they warmed up, Mr. Harlow shared stories: the oil crisis, the recession, the Vietnam draft years. "We've seen the world shake before," he said with a tired smile. "It always finds its balance again." Lily curled up beside him, listening with wide eyes. Mason watched her and wondered, would she remember this night with fear, or with the strange beauty of people leaning on each other? At sunrise, the emergency alert blared again. "Multiple communications satellites have been disabled. National internet disruptions anticipated. Please remain calm." People rushed outside, looking up at the sky. They expected explosions, smoke, jet trails. But the sky was painfully, insultingly calm, just a bright, quiet blue that didn't match the panic in their hearts. Sometimes silence is louder than violence. Neighbors gathered on their driveways, whispering theories. Was the next attack coming? Was America ready? Would the country ever feel safe again? Mason held Lily's hand. Elena squeezed his arm, and for the first time since the chaos began, Mason understood something chilling. Day one was destruction, but day two was understanding. Understanding that life as they knew it had changed and wasn't coming back anytime soon. By mid-morning, the church on Maple Street looked like the heart of the town. People gathered there not because they were told to, but because they needed to feel part of something bigger than fear. Inside, battery-powered lanterns cast warm circles of light on worried faces. Mothers clutched their children. Teenagers whispered anxiously. Old veterans stood with arms crossed, fighting ghosts they thought they had buried decades ago. At the front, Captain Doyle, a retired Marine with a firm voice and steady gaze, took the podium. "We are not helpless," he began. His voice echoed across the room. "We are not soldiers, but we are neighbors. That counts for more than you think." People straightened up. "We cannot prevent every attack, but we can prevent panic. We can prevent loneliness. We can prevent our community from breaking." He pointed to a whiteboard. Simple lists were scribbled in red marker. Check on elderly, share food and water, set up watch rotations, keep lights low at night, teach basic first aid. No spreading unverified rumors. "Fear is contagious," Doyle said, "but so is courage." The room, though tense, breathed easier. And for the first time that day, Mason felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt since the news broke. Direction. Later, as the crowd trickled out, Lily tugged at her father's sleeve. "Daddy," she whispered, "who started the war?" Mason froze. He looked down at her big brown eyes, eyes that still believed adults had answers to everything. "How do you explain geopolitics, old grudges, global power struggles, and human pride to a child who still sleeps with a stuffed panda?" He knelt in front of her. "Sometimes wars aren't about bad guys," he said gently. "They're about people making choices out of fear, choices that hurt others." "But," she frowned, "if no one is the bad guy, why are people fighting?" Mason swallowed hard. "Because not everyone remembers what matters most," he whispered. "People forget kindness. They forget we all want the same things." Lily nodded slowly, processing the words in a way only children do, deeply, quietly, without pretending to understand. She hugged him tightly. And in that hug, Mason realized something he hadn't before. The real battle wasn't happening overseas. It was happening inside every heart, including his. By afternoon, whispers grew louder. A neighbor ran across the street shouting, "Chicago might be next." Another claimed Los Angeles had been hit. Someone else swore the East Coast was evacuating. None of it was confirmed. But fear doesn't wait for confirmation. Cars packed, suitcases dragged across pavement, families climbed into vans with tear-stained cheeks. Mason watched people he'd known for a decade vanish in a trail of exhaust and panic. Elena asked quietly, "Should we go too?" He didn't answer immediately. The truth was simple but terrifying. There was nowhere safe, nowhere guaranteed, nowhere untouched. "We stay together," Mason finally said. "That's what matters." Elena nodded, not because she agreed, but because her love for her family outweighed her fear. At 7:42 p.m., a sound ripped through the air, louder than thunder, sharper than the earlier warnings. The town's siren blared in a long, continuous howl. This time, people didn't ask questions. They ran. Mason grabbed Lily and Elena, dragging them down into the basement. The house shook as neighbors slammed doors and sprinted for cover. Lily cried softly. Elena whispered prayers in Spanish under her breath. Then, the distant rumble, low, far away, but unmistakable. Was it thunder, a blast, a test run? No one knew, and that made it worse. Mason held his family tightly as the walls hummed with the echo. Minutes stretched. Every sound felt like the beginning of something catastrophic. But eventually, the rumble stopped. The siren died. Silence returned. Elena whispered, "Are we still alive?" Mason nodded, though his heart still pounded. "Yes." But inside, he wondered how many more times he could say that. At 9:14 p.m., power flickered for the first time in hours. Then, miraculously, the TV rebooted. A presidential emergency broadcast cut through the static. The president looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, shoulders heavy, but his voice held unshakable resolve. My fellow Americans, Day 2 is not a defeat. It is a reckoning. He paused. The nation held its breath. We have been hit. We have been tested. But we are still standing, and we will not let fear turn us against each other. He leaned forward slightly. Our greatest threat is not the enemy outside our borders. It is the chaos inside them. Those words struck deeper than any explosion. We must remain united, he said, not as Democrats or Republicans, not as strangers, but as Americans and as human beings. When the screen faded, Mason looked at Elena. She wiped her cheeks. Maybe we're stronger than we think, she whispered. Maybe she was right. After the broadcast, Mason and Elena focused on reinforcing doors, rationing food, and organizing supplies. But Lily disappeared into her room for almost an hour. When she came back, she held a sheet of notebook paper covered in colorful marker letters. She walked to the front window and taped it up carefully. The message read, "If you're scared, knock. We'll help." Mason's heart twisted. "Sweetie," he whispered, "that could be dangerous." Elena touched his arm gently. "She's reminding us who we are," she said softly. In a world falling apart, that message felt like a candle in a storm. At 11:23 p.m., another knock. Not loud, not demanding, just hopeful. Mason opened the door cautiously. A young woman stood there, drenched in sweat, trembling, her backpack ripped at the straps. She looked like she'd run miles. "Please," she whispered. "My car died on the highway. I didn't know where to go. Everyone's fleeing. I saw your sign and—" She broke down, crying. Elena rushed to her and wrapped her arms around her. "My name's Kara," the woman said between sobs. "I'm trying to get home to my sick father in Michigan." Mason helped her inside. Lily offered her a blanket. Kara stared at them all with disbelief. "People are scared," she said shakily. "Everyone I asked for help slammed their doors. I thought kindness was gone." Elena smiled softly. "It isn't gone," she whispered. "It's just quieter. But it's still here." Kara cried harder, not from fear, but relief. While everyone slept, Kara stayed awake in the guest room, exhausted but overwhelmed. She pulled out her dying phone and recorded a short video, her voice cracked, her hands still shaking. She told the world about the fear on the highway, the people who refused to help, the little girl's handwritten sign, the family who opened their home, the kindness that saved her when she felt the world had turned cold. She ended with, "America hasn't realized the war has begun, but maybe we're finally realizing who we can become." She posted it. Then her phone died. What she didn't know was that it would spread faster than any rumor, faster than any fear. By morning, millions had seen it. Millions wept. Millions shared their own acts of kindness. It became the first viral moment of hope since the war began. The next sunrise felt different, not safer, but softer. Neighbors walked outside with small smiles instead of panic. People left handwritten notes on doors offering extra medicine, phone charging food, water warm, blankets, a place to talk, a place to cry. For the first time since the alerts began, laughter echoed faintly through the street, hesitant but real. People didn't feel safe, but they felt connected. And sometimes that's the first step toward healing. That evening, Mason sat on the porch with Lily in his lap, watching the sky turn a soft orange. The country was still wounded, still scared, still unsure. But something had shifted, not in the government, not in the military, but in the people. On day 2 of World War III, America finally understood something profound. The war wasn't just between nations. It was inside every home, every heart, every choice between fear and compassion. In their small Ohio town, a father chose kindness, a mother chose compassion, a girl chose hope, a stranger chose gratitude, a community chose unity. And that was the real moment America realized the truth. You don't survive a war by fighting harder. You survive by holding tighter to humanity, to each other, and to the belief that even in darkness, people can still be light. And that light? It began with a child's handwritten note taped to a window.